Greetings, Rebel fans. My name is Jason Kelly. This is the Let's Run podcast. Today, and for the final time, I am previewing the Boise State UNLV game. I've been on a couple of different shows now, previewing the game. I was on That College Football Guy, '07. I was on his show earlier, just about an hour and a half ago. Of course, I was very graciously invited onto the Bronco Blamemeyer channel. Really gracious, grateful to be on there. We did a very long, about an hour and a half long preview of this game. That was done actually before the Rebels beat Oregon State up in Corvallis. But now it is time for me to finally do the Let's Run podcast official preview for the Boise State game. Won't make it too long because I know that maybe we were planning on doing some Burner Brigade tonight with the guys, the Masshole, the Reno Hater, Rebel Guy, Reb Ombre, all the OGs we're thinking of jumping on tonight. We'll see if that happens. I'm hoping it does. But I wanted to get something on this channel specifically so that I could send it out to the Substack readers. Just so everybody has their fill pregame before this Boise State matchup. I am sad to say that I will actually not be at the game in person. My brother-in-law is getting married in Utah. However, my best friend and I, we are hosting a little party up in Utah to watch the game. It'll be the first game that I've missed this year. I don't feel bad about that because I'm going to be able to get up, pre and post game shows very quickly. There's going to be content immediately before and after the game. And so by being able to kind of be in an easier location to start filming, I'm hoping that will improve the level of coverage for the Boise State game specifically. So expect a pregame live show. That'll be about an hour and a half or an hour before the game actually starts, hopefully to get you guys some pregame content before the Boise State game starts. Win or lose, we will have a post-game live show. Win or lose, we will have a post-game live show against on Friday night after the game ends. And if we win, we will most definitely do a Burner Brigade podcast either Friday night or Saturday at some point during the day. Just to celebrate. And if we lose, we probably won't do a Burner Brigade podcast. It'll be pretty sad. I actually do find myself feeling nervous for the game, which is not something that I think that the majority of Boise fans feel. You know, they came in and beat us pretty handily last year in the Mountain West Championship game. Some of that was really good play by Talon Green and Ashton Genty. And I think that the Boise State coaching staff was kind of their finale of their audition to keep their jobs as the coaching staff. If you don't remember, Boise State actually fired their head coach midway through last season and replaced him with the current head coach, Spencer Danielson. And so that Boise State UNLV Mountain West Championship game was kind of the culmination of Spencer Danielson, the current Boise State head coach, kind of auditioning for the job. So there was a lot riding on that game for Boise State. And they came out. I've gone back and I've rewatched the highlights of that game several times. I've rewatched the entire game several times. And then I've kind of compared how that Rebel team looked, specifically in the San Jose game, the Kansas game, and the Boise State game, the Mountain West Championship. I've tried to compare that team to this year's current Rebel team. And what I've seen is that this year's team is considerably better than last year's team on the defensive side of the ball. On the offensive side, we're better as well. Jaden Maeva was very good at getting the ball to Ricky White. He was a good passer downfield. However, Hodge is a little less mistake prone. Now, Hodge, as I'll get into here in just a few minutes, does have an issue of dealing with blitz packages from other teams. And Boise State is very good at getting to the quarterback. And so that's going to be a big challenge for the Rebels in this game. I would fully expect Boise State to bring the house a lot. They've probably seen the tape against Hodge, showing that Hodge has some weaknesses when it comes to getting rid of the ball, making good decisions outside of the pocket, and just being a little more cautious when dealing with the blitz. And so I would expect Boise State to bring a lot of pressure. But the main point I wanted to say is that UNLV is a better team this year than they were last year. Boise State, um, I don't think they're better this year than they were in as a team in that Mountain West Championship game last year. Obviously, last year, if you look at the stats of that game, that team did have Ashton Genty. Um, Genty ran for, I want to pull up the stats of that game. So Ashton Genty ran for 153 yards and 1 touchdown in that game. Also, Boise State had Taylon Green, who was a better quarterback than Maddox Madsen. Um, so I think, and they had George Halani, and I think that Boise State was a better team last year. So I think that Boise State's worse than they were last year in the Mountain West Championship game. And I think that the Rebels are better than they were last year in the Mountain West Championship game. I'm not sure that Boise fans would want to debate that. Maybe they think that Genty's just taken such a big leap, but I think he was kind of already that player last year. He just kind of there had been some nagging injuries throughout the year that had kept him out. But that's some reason for optimism for the Rebels going into this game. Certainly, the Vegas thinks that it will be a close game. I believe that the UNLV. I want to make sure that I get the line right. I believe it's at 3.5. It's still at 3.5. Depending on which sports book you look at, I've seen it at 3 before. It started out at 2.5. But it has kind of steadily increased. And go ahead and leave, if you guys are watching, go ahead and leave your score predictions in the comments. I would love to see what you guys think this game is going to turn out as. So Boise State's favored by about 3.5, and I think that's probably the right number. If it were in Boise, Boise would probably be favored by 6 or 7. Boise fans are feeling kind of something similar as what happened last year. I think that Boise generally, the market kind of thinks that it's going to be, 44-28, 51 to 30, 27. Boise's feeling a very comfortable win coming on, and certainly that is something that definitely could happen. However, this game is not last year's game. The Rebels are healthier. We got some very good news on the injury front. If you read, I guess I'll quote directly from the Review Journal, but our linebacker, Marcel McDuffie, had, this was kind of a mystery to all of us because the Las Vegas media doesn't seem too intent on asking Barry Odom direct questions about which players are hurt and which players are healthy. But our starting linebacker, Marcel McDuffie, will be back for this Boise State game. All signs seem to point that way. Obviously, if you talk to them, they would say, "Oh, it's day by day," and da 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 da. But he is planning on playing. He practiced. He looked good. He was our starting linebacker for a reason. Having him back will help this defense. Though he hasn't played since week 2, so take that with a grain of salt in terms of how much impact that's going to actually have. But I wanted to give Rebel fans, and I kind of did this when I previewed the game on Bronco Blameyer's channel. I wanted to give Rebel fans the formula for the win. If UNLV is to as an underdog pull off this victory, I want to tell you how it would have to happen, because I don't think that the Rebels have 20 or 30 different ways to win this game. I think that they have one achievable, but in my mind, not necessarily likely path to beating Boise State. So the way that the Rebels win this game, there are 3 things that the Rebels have to do. And if you watch the Bronco Blameyer preview, you've seen these, but I'm going to try and add a little bit more to them, just to give you some more perspective. The first thing is they have to force 2 interceptions. And I say interceptions now. Obviously, any 2 turnovers would be completely fine. If it's a forced fumble, I don't think Ashton Genty is going to fumble the ball. The guy's the best player in college football, but say that the Rebels were able to force a fumble, that would be essentially the same thing. But I want to talk specifically about interceptions. Jalen Catalon and Jackson Woodard, and really the whole Rebel secondary as a whole, has been very good at forcing interceptions. They've been sitting back in zones. They've been giving quarterbacks that they're playing against different looks, trying to kind of confuse them. And I believe that the Rebels can do this. In fact, if I had to say of the three keys that I have for a Rebel victory, I think this is the most likely. And again, maybe it's a forced fumble and a recovery, but I think forcing two turnovers is something that the Rebels can do in this game. Whether it's a Jalen Catalon interception, whether it's the Rebels, effectively stymieing Ashton Genty for a play or two and forcing on 3rd and long a pass, I think that the Rebels, who are ball hawks, should be able to, or can, I'm not going to say should, can force two turnovers. Now, what does this do? What does this do if the Rebels force those turnovers? It gives the Rebels more time of possession, and advantageous field position. And that leads into the next 2 points. But I do not believe that the Rebels are going to be able to shut down this Boise State offense enough without turnovers, simply because the Boise State running game with Ashton Genty is too good. They're going to have too much time of possession. The Rebels are going to kind of get grinded down. And without turnovers, I find it impossible for the Rebels to win this game. Now, luckily, the Rebels are really good at forcing turnovers, so it's not something that's unattainable. But I do not believe that the Rebel defense will be stout enough to win this game without forcing those two turnovers. So that's key number one. Key number two is replicating the defensive performance that Hawaii had on Boise State, but UNLV doing it. So if you look back at Boise State's last game, Boise State went to the islands. Now, it's very difficult to win in Hawaii. And that's mostly just because Hawaii is 2 time zones away. It's a very far travel. You're in Hawaii. I mean, it's brutal. And so I never believe that a team should be expected to cover when they play on the islands. Ashton Genty, it was probably one of his worst games of the year. He had 31 carries, 7 yards average a carry, 217 yards. Now, would I like to hold Ashton Genty under 217 yards? Absolutely. But the thing that Hawaii was able to do is force a higher number of carries for Ashton Genty. He is under an immense physical. He has an immense physical load. Genty is unbelievably relied upon by this offense. And by forcing him to more carries, you end up putting a bigger physical toll on him, not in an injury sense, but more so in just, you kind of want those miles to kind of log onto him, to kind of tire him out over the course of the game. You want 30 plus carries if you can. And that's because you're forcing him to grind out 3 or even 2 or 3 yard carries that are really difficult physically on a running back. Oftentimes, a 2 or a 3 yard carry is much more difficult physically for a player to handle than a 10 or 12 yard carry, because you're fighting through the line, you're fighting through gaps. And so replicating that kind of defensive performance that Hawaii was able to do, is UNLV capable of doing that? Yes, they are. UNLV is very good against the run. That doesn't mean they're going to shut down Ashton Genty. They have not played a running back like Ashton Genty yet. They haven't played teams that I would say have incredible rushing attacks outside of Kansas, who did pretty well against UNLV with the run, at least in the first half. And so I fully expect the Rebels to be, able to do this to a certain extent. Now, does holding Ashton Genty to 35 carries, 214 yards, does that guarantee you a win? Absolutely not. He's still getting 214 yards or however many yards. But forcing him to have a heavy load in terms of number of carries and kind of limiting those big 50 to 75 yard plays that he gets 2 or 3 of every week, if you can limit that to 1, now you're in business. Ashton Genty will break through and rush for 75 yards for a touchdown in this game. It's going to happen. The question is it going to happen more than once? If it happens more than once, the Rebels are in some serious trouble. If it happens one time, or if the Rebels are able to shut down, one of those 50 plus yard and to keep Ashton Genty from doing one of those, then I think the Rebels will be in pretty good shape. And that leads pretty succinctly into key number 3, which is limit Boise's time of possession. Now, Boise generally wins time of possession this year. I don't think they did against Oregon. I'd have to look at that. I don't know if so. ESPN, I do not believe, has that up. But okay, yes, they do actually. So Boise State even Boise State won time of possession against Oregon, but narrowly. The Rebels aren't going to win this game unless they win time of possession against Boise State. Now, what does that do? If you win time of possession and you give Boise State less time to have the ball, you limit the number of run plays that they can do. You force Maddox Madsen, who's a good quarterback. The Rebels shouldn't be fooled into thinking that this is a one-man show. Maddox Madsen's a good quarterback. They have a great receiver, Cameron Camper. Riley is a great tight end. There's a lot going on there. It's not just Ashton Genty. But if you win the time of possession battle, and that means grinding out drives, grinding out those 7, 8, 9-minute drives. The Rebels need 2 or 3 of those. They do. If they want to win this game, they do. You force Maddox Madsen, if you win the time of possession battle, to throw the ball more. That gets the ball out of Ashton Genty's hands. And that helps the Rebels overall just outscore Boise State. Obviously. I mean, this is standard stuff. I'm not breaking any laws of science here. This is all standard. Will the Rebels do this? There are ways to do it. If you wanted to go beyond my 3 keys, the Rebels could make up some serious ground in special teams, whether that be a blocked punt, or just big kickoff returns that are giving the Rebels advantageous starting field position. Obviously, the Rebels have to limit penalties. All this kind of goes kind of baked into the same cake. But I wanted to focus on those 3 points. Now let's talk a little bit about the Rebels' offense in general. Hodge is going to have to deal with pressure from the quarterback. I hope that the coaching staff sets up some screen stuff from either Jacob or Ricky to kind of counteract those blitzes that are most assuredly going to come. If you haven't watched a guy named Ahmed Hassanin for Boise State, incredible player, and he's very good at getting to the quarterback. And this Boise State team is excellent at putting pressure on the quarterback. So Hodge is going to have to deal with that pretty well. In terms of attendance for the game, I wanted to kind of close on this point. The Rebels, we're expecting the biggest crowd in Allegiant Stadium history for the Rebels. I'm sure that the Boise State people are going to be, this stuff about the sold out recruiting section post that Brad Odom, Brad Odom, if you don't know, he is, he's one of our recruiters for the team. He handles, he's like a recruiting coordinator, one of the coaches too. Really good guy. I've talked to Brad. Loves, bleeds Rebel football. Great dude. He wants recruits coming to the games to feel excited, to know that they're wanted, to know that there's anticipation and excitement. And before every big game, home game that we've had this year, the Fresno game, Brad has put out a post saying, "Hey, we don't have space. We've sold out the recruiting section for this game." Now, what does that mean? It just means that there is a specific number of tickets and experiences that possible recruits can get if they claim them from the coaching staff. There's a limited number of those. Now, recruits can still probably get into the game anyway. The staff can still get them extra tickets, but there's a specific number of a specific type of seat and experience that recruits can get. Coach Odom just wants the recruits to know that there's excitement around the game. Before the Fresno State and Syracuse game, he posted the exact same graphic, and yet all of a sudden, Boise fans kind of got their panties in a twist about us saying that, about Brad, Coach Odom. Obviously his initials are, if you look at his name, it's B Odom, so people might think that that's Barry Odom. It's not. But again, I don't feel like that's irresponsible of Brad. That's just his name. If people get confused by his identity, then that's their fault. It's not his fault. Um, but what I would say is UNLV fans, don't fall for the bait this week. The Boise fans love looking for things to chap them. They love looking for little nooks and little crannies that they can get themselves into to try and gin up some sort of dispute. I think that they go looking for fights. Now, look, do we have some crazy Rebel fans that say things that they shouldn't? Absolutely, we do. And making fun of people or berating people or speaking negatively of people in a way that's vulgar is not something that's acceptable. But I would just say let the game play out, let the chips fall where they may, win or lose. UNLV is in a better place than they could have ever dreamt of a few seasons ago. This is a great game. The Rebels should go in expecting to win, trying to win, doing everything they can to win. They should not be submissive to the all great and powerful Ashton Genty and Boise State Broncos. They should go in with a chip on their shoulder. They're the home underdogs. Go in and try and win this game. Be respectful online. I know that the emotions are going to be running high after this game. If we win, you can trash talk a little bit, but don't cross any lines. If we lose, maybe just log off for the night, because it's just not going to be fun for you. But also, if we lose, be classy, be classy, show respect where it's due. So, with all that being said, it's going to be an outrageous and absolutely fantastic atmosphere inside Allegiant Stadium. Proud of UNLV, proud of, I tweeted this. We're 6-1, having faced 3 Power 4 opponents, 2 conference games on the road. Fresno State, being 6-1 is a great achievement for this program. And Friday night is a chance for this program to really take the next step and prove itself. And will the Rebels do it? Well, I have predicted. Do we storm the field if we win? Absolutely. Now, I don't know how this. Now, look, I don't know how you would even get down to the field because obviously the student section is not going to be down. You're not going to get bleachers all the way down to the field from the student section. But if you can, do it. But focus on winning the game first, But yes, if UNLV wins the game, which they could. Now, I'm not predicting they will, but they could. They do storm the field. That would be a first time in the history of Allegiant Stadium, I think, that anybody stormed the field there. So I've got Boise State winning about a 10-point victory at the moment, 44-34. I don't really care about the exact number. I just think that Boise State, I think they'll win the time of possession battle. I think that Ashton Genty will dominate possession for the game. I think maybe our offense will make a mistake, and Boise State will win a competitive but overall kind of comfortable win for them. That's what I'm seeing right now. That's what I'm predicting. That's how I feel about this game going into it, having done as much prep as I possibly could for this game. I feel like I've said my piece about it. But Rebel fans, show up because I hope I'm wrong. I could be wrong. If you think that UNLV has a 0% chance of winning this game, you're incorrect. They have a chance of winning. They do. And they very well could. I hope that we win the toss. I hate losing the coin toss. But you guys just live it up on Friday night. Create a great atmosphere. This is our city. It's our team. Show up, show out for the guys. Give it your all. Cheer as loud as you can. And hopefully the Rebels will come out with a win. But I appreciate you guys all checking out this preview show. I hope you guys all have a wonderful rest of the week. Again, look out for a burner podcast before the game, maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow. Not 100% sure yet. And I will do a live pregame show Friday before the game starts and a postgame show after the game. So hope you guys have a wonderful week. Let's run.